You did it, Tons. Whatever little magic you just did, you did it. Golden Debate Show, GoldenDebateShow.com. Like, comment, share, and download. That's the only way that we get the word of the show out. We shine the truth on the media. We shine the truth on these vampires, and we come for the truth.
Hit him with it. Hit him with it.
What's the logic there, Tony?
Pi equals 3.14 gigawatts.
Word. The late night shift is getting to you, huh, kiddo?
Yes, sir.
This shit obviously doesn't pay the bills. That's why my head looks like this. Not that guy.
Debate Show live with Carl Calzone and Tuto Tortellini.
Alright, so I'll get into a little news real quick. A Detroit man stole his dead father's body from a graveyard because he thought he could bring him back to life. Deeply religious Vincent Bright, 48, dug up the corpse of 93-year-old Clarence Bright from the city's cemetery on January 14th. He then carried it back to his east side home where he stored it in a freezer. Cops were tipped off by the worried family members. They raided the property. Bright was arrested and charged with disinterring a body. The Huffington Post reports, and he told cops that he hoped that he could resurrect his dad. On Monday, he pleaded guilty after cutting a deal with prosecutors who will only serve probation. That's kind of nuts, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely nuts.
Also, computer scientists at MIT and the National University of Ireland have developed a mapping algorithm that creates dense, highly detailed 3D maps that make Google Maps look silly, of indoor and outdoor environments in real time. The researchers tested their algorithms on videos taken with a low-cost Kinect camera. A Kinect camera, dude, from the Xbox, including one that explores the serpentine halls and stairways of MIT's Santa Center. Applying their mapping technique to these videos, the researchers created rich three-dimensional maps as the camera explored its surroundings. So you thought that all this surveillance shit was done. It's only just begun. So in light news...
Serious. Let's put a smile.
Science.
Kind of scares me every time, but it's good. In light news, the Obama's got another dog because the 3-year-old dog is getting too old.
Don't make no sense, everybody. Yeah, they still have some responsibilities for him, but they're not always around between school, sports practice, all that stuff. And so Bo was starting to look a little down in the dumps inside the house. And Sunny, the new dog, she's only a year old, and the truth is, she's faster than he is. She jumps higher. She's friskier, and
every man has to learn that, though.
He is trying to keep up.
Every man has to learn that, though. The little
it's gonna,
fake media guy says.
He's loving it, and ultimately, I think it's going to be great for him over the long term. Right now, Michelle is in full parenting mode and really focused on getting
full hell, everybody mode.
And, catch and. Also, there have been a couple of accidents. And,
and told people I can do a better job through your speeches, your campaign you had.
It is true, but we live in.
That's a national museum.
We live in rental housing. We didn't have to put down a deposit, but we are making sure that it gets cleaned up for the next.
Stated that Secretary Kerry, upon assuming office in February, launched this internal review of the ARB's findings. That disclosure, in turn, raises a number of questions, which I'd like to go through with you in turn. Number one, who led this review of the ARB?
Well, first, I would like to clarify exactly what that statement means.
I love when the spokespeople stammer and because it makes me feel better, you know what I mean?
Put on administrative leave. When Secretary Kerry came into office here, he basically picked up the ball. It was a continuation of that review that had already been started. He wanted to take the time to get all the facts himself. He wanted to take the time with his senior team to sit down and go over the ARB's findings in great depth and look into the situation of these four and their careers.
Stop right there.
Yeah.
The statement said that he launched this upon assuming office. Now you're telling me there was an ongoing internal review of ARB that Secretary Clinton transferred to him?
That's their clip, by the way.
Review,
just like to throw that out. But the clip is important because it's Maria Horst, who's the state spokeswoman.
I think we made it very clear when these four people were put on administrative leave that there was a review process into them that was ongoing. obviously, so that process was ongoing before Secretary Kerry got here. That's been well documented publicly. Point B is that when Secretary Kerry took office, he wanted to make sure that he himself and his senior team did a thorough investigation into what had happened, picking up on the work Secretary Clinton
They're talking about
done,
Benghazi, by the way.
He would be the one making the decision, so he
Where
wanted to make sure
Ambassador
he was
got
acquainted with
marked
all the
and dragged
facts,
across
and
the
that we
street.
looked into all of the things that might go into a decision surrounding
This is a media clip, by the way, that they played on
What
news.
was the actual
sounds
scope
horrible.
of this review by Secretary Kerry? Was it just with respect to these 4 individuals, or was he reviewing the entire findings of the ARB?
Again, I think you're using the term review in a way that I'm not using it. When I say review, he wanted to make sure he was well acquainted with all of the facts. He wanted to dive deeply into all of the issues involved with the ARB, which obviously now fell under his purview to make decisions. So it's not like he was making a judgment on the ARB. That's not at all what I'm insinuating. That he was himself looking at the ARB, diving into the details, and also gathering other facts that may go into his eventual decision about these 4.
You just stated earlier in response to another question from one of my colleagues that he did engage in, quote, additional fact-finding. Mm-hmm. What did that entail? Were documents reviewed? Were new depositions taken? What kind of fact-finding mission are we talking about?
Well, I think most specifically what I'm referring to is that he and the team took a look at the totality of the careers that these 4 individuals have had at the State Department. Again, they've served honorably, had a distinguished record, and all of that wanted to be taken into account.
Well, I think there's no better way for Americans to have a real sense of where we've arrived than to do what I did a few weeks ago, which was to re-rent the movie Enemy of the State from 1998.
I'm in that movie.
And you'll remember that, Larry, because you're in it, playing yourself.
On the end of the movie.
That's right. In the very end of the movie, during which an innocent person, Will Smith, has been pursued by all the technical surveillance capability of the NSA, which, by the way,
you need to watch this movie now, Tone. I did a little research. Guess what? It's not on Netflix.
Now it's a very realistic movie right now.
You cannot find this movie, really. You have to buy it.
Every American see it. But after he's been pursued by all this innocently, by some actual rogue NSA, National Security Agency factions, at the end they have you on the screen saying, asking the question, where do you draw the line between the gathering of intelligence that the government has to have and the protection of civil liberties, particularly the sanctity of the home? And you end with a kind of heartfelt cry, you have no right to enter my home, come into my home, right? But as you know, I'm sure, they're in your home right now, Larry, and mine. If you have an iPhone in your pocket, I don't know if you have it right now in your kitchen or your bedroom, or you're charging in the bedroom at night, as I do, the NSA, the National Security Agency, can record and store all of your conversation, any of your, more generally, if you have a computer in your home, your tweets, your email, your purchases over online, your Google searches, all of that, including your iPhone or smartphone as a GPS, all of your movements is all on record to be retrieved at will. When the president says we don't listen to your calls, he sort of has his fingers crossed. It's true they don't listen in real time. That would take half the population of the United States listening in to every 2 people who are online together. What they do is TiVo it. They have it on file, and they have your entire digital record at any time. Now that's the infrastructure of a police state. We don't have a police state, or you and I wouldn't be talking to you right now.
We wouldn't be here,
but they could turn this into a police state overnight.
Defense coordinator. My job was to man, train, and equip the Iraqi army in Al-Anbar, Najaf, Karbala, and Northern Babil provinces. And I can tell you right now, well, somebody had the great idea to get rid of the Iraqi army, so when we rebuilt it, we did everything we could to make it as strong as possible. And I'll tell you right now, Homeland Security would kick their butts in a week. What's happening here is we're building a domestic military because it's unlawful or unconstitutional to use American troops on American soil. So what we're doing is we're building a military. My best friend, who's a SWAT officer in Nashville, who came to Iraq with me to train the Iraqi police, sent me an email with a picture of him in the media on the streets of Watertown, Mass., wearing the exact same combat gear that we had in Iraq, only it was a different color. And the way we do things in the military is called task organization. You take a command and then you attach units to it in order to accomplish the mission. What's happening is Homeland Security is pre-staging gear, equipment, consistent. What they're trying to do is use standardized vehicles, standardized equipment. I saw a picture in the Boston Globe during the marathon bombing where there was a state police officer, actually there were two officers, they both had identical helmets, flak jackets, weapons, everything I wore in Iraq, only it was all blue. The officer on one side had a big patch on his back that said Massachusetts State Police. Another officer next to him, his patch said Boston Police. And so what we're doing here, and let's not kid about it, we're building a domestic army and we're shrinking the military because the government is afraid of its own citizens. The last time more than 10 terrorists were in the same place at one time was September 11th. And all these vehicles in the world wouldn't have prevented it, nor would it have helped anybody. So I don't know where we're going to use this many vehicles and this many troops. Concord is just one little cog in the wheel. We're building an army over here, and I can't believe that people aren't seeing it. Is everybody blind?
What it does do is to put into the hands of the executive branch the ability to blackmail every person in the country and turn them into informants, as was done by the Stasi in East Germany.
And they're tailored to do that.
We've given up some civil liberties, though.
Well, I would query about what you mean in terms of civil liberties and what we have given up. Yes, do we exchange information in ways we did not before? Absolutely. You can say that that is to the extent that you exchange information between CIA, FBI, NSA, and the like, you could characterize that as somehow giving up liberties, but the fact of the matter is it's understandable and absolutely necessary if you want to protect the security of the United States.
The young people and other people, all of a sudden, it looked like almost a majority are saying, hey, the government's gone too far, and Barack Obama's politically inclined, so he's moving and moving and moving. He's been moving away from it. He's going to keep the basic program as Elmer said.
Maybe he didn't want to know about it.
He doesn't care about it.
Just a moment.
He's a constitutional lawyer. He's not really a constitutional lawyer.
Now, you know your neighborhood. Keep an eye on it. A stranger taking a shortcut through the backyard next door might have broken into your neighbor's home. Report him.
A strange car parked illegally might be loaded with stolen goods waiting to make a getaway. Report it.
A loud fight next door might be the start of a violent crime. Report it.
If you see a prowler at night, don't frighten him away by turning on a light. Report him.
Remember, by helping us apprehend a criminal, you make sure that you're not his next victim. I guess you can sum it up in 2 words.
You also wrote, young people sagging their pants today is no different than young people rocking afros, dashikis, or platform shoes in the 60s and 70s. Russell, afros came out of the struggle, the African-American civil rights movement, and are a symbol of the appreciation of black beauty and the black aesthetic. The dashiki is a traditional form of West African dress which symbolizes African pride. Sagging, by the way, Russell, the hip-hop community of which you helped establish, dropped the G on the word so that, spelled backwards, the word reads Niggas. It came from Rikers Island in New York, one of the largest detention centers in the U.S. It was originally called Wearing Your Pants Rikers Style. When you went in, you turned in your belt, your shoelaces, and the only shirt the jail provided was a white XXL T-shirt. Are you equating dressing like a criminal to African pride? Are you saying it's okay to perpetuate the negative stereotype of young black men as convicts, criminals, prisoners? How does that enhance their lives or society as a whole?
These people behind you, support system, conferences, conventions. You had red state, blue state, so shut up.
Science. Okay. Shut up already. It's just science.
I don't know.
So, Tony, have you ever heard about the story of John Teeter?
John Teeter time traveler story.
Well, you will now. This is off the realest news. Go to YouTube and check out the man. So John Teeter is a guy who supposedly is a time traveler. Next show I'm going to play a clip, the other side debunking it, but keep an open mind and just check it out. What?
People need to talk to Doc Brown with the
science.
EarlyMorningMouth.com, Golden Debate Show.
Pamela, or lady named Pamela, had with John Teeter the guy who claimed he was John Titor. And not that there's anything spectacular released in that I'm going to also read it, though. So this is going to be over an hour long, so I'm not going to do an hour show or video here. I'm going to do one, maybe
down there in one of those catacombs. This other guy, what they look like, I don't know. This don't make no sense to everybody.
Now, my first forewarning, if you will.
Science.
I don't know what to make of it.
Already.
I read
This
it
is
in
science.
2007 is the first time I came across it. So he'd already been long gone if it was true. But as I read this to you, keep and do not forget in your mind. And some of this, it's absolutely checked, and was even copyrighted in 2003 by the lawyer that worked for him and his on this planet's parents, so to speak. That's a fact. I checked into that. So, and that was done in 2003. So, all I'm saying is, I know this, the conversation took place. It was all over the internet back then. There's no disputing that. When you hear what he has to say, that long ago, this is before 9/11, before Department of Homeland Security, right?
Yo, this is King Midas, and you're listening to The Golden Show. It's King Midas certified. Golden.
I think that was 90. So everything I'm going to read you, you're going to listen to right now and say, oh my God, this is like appropriate right now.
Jobs, and jobs. Let's vote for jobs.
Back in the 2000s, people would say you're crazy. That's not going to happen in this country, right? Yet things have already
I know a lot of people want to send blankets or water. Just send your cash.
I will start reading this to you. And some of it, because he's basically on a forum and people are asking him questions and he replies. So it's kind of in that format. And you'll notice sometimes I may repeat the same thing. Like, hey, didn't he already answer that? Yes.
This is
sometimes he clarifies.
Listening to The
And tells you, well,
Golden
this is
Show.
what was meant by when I said that, and he goes into further detail, even though it's the same question being asked. So, the gist of this whole thing, he says there are world lines, so to speak. That's what they call them. And that in the year 2036, they develop a machine device that can make you go forward or backward in time. Except the further back in time,
Back to the Future. Like, comment, share, and download. Let's get these likes up.
And since there are infinite world lines, basically, infinite
Liquid
things
gold
happening, for every positive decision you did in this world line, there's another you in another world line that did not do that decision, did the exact opposite, and so forth. He says there's even a world line, for example, where I'm not the time traveler, you're the time traveler, and you're coming back in the time and getting on the forum and doing what I'm doing right now. What he says is that there are no two timelines that are alike. They are so extremely close, some of them,
and whose parents
that
are under-resourced, we shouldn't be helping them get a leg up.
On one and then went to the other one.
And so some of the proposals we've seen now are talking about even deeper cuts
like there's always a 1
in
2%
programs like Head Start.
In world
even deeper cuts in education support.
And they say, well, can you
even
give us an
deeper
example
cuts
of something?
in
He
basic
said, well, for
science and
example,
research.
A sports team that won a game.
You know, that's like
may
eating
not
a
have
corn
won
seed.
in the other timeline. Or the
You know,
other world line.
it's like
so they asked him, well,
being
why are you here
it's
with our
like
world
penny
line?
wise and
Or
pound
this one, why
foolish.
did you come here? And he said, well, his grandfather worked for IBM and had a 5100 computer, and one unique ability about that computer, which by the way, at the time he'd said this, nobody knew this. He said it has a unique ability. It can read like 3 or 4 different types of computer language. And this is a machine from like the I don't know if it was
from
the
its
60s
earliest
or
days,
70s.
Our republic has been bound together by
and that was
this
kind of a
system,
secret.
and by the
So
values
while
that
this was happening,
define
he
it.
was going online telling
These
people
values,
this. People were scrambling
equality,
to find out, is that true?
opportunity,
and I think
and
it took
justice
them
under
to the time he
law
left.
were
I
first
think,
codified in the United
to finally
States
contact
Constitution.
someone who knew definitively at IBM and said, "Yep, we never released that information. There's no public information about that, but yes, that's actually true. That this computer, this old 5100, can do that." And it was critical for them to get this computer into the future. I can't think of what the reason was at this point. I know because it could read different code, and I guess because after what he calls End Day or Nuclear Day, World War III, a lot of stuff was wiped out. So there's different computer language stuff that needed to be dealt with, and the 5100 could read it. I think. It's been a long time. So I'm kind of giving you a little foreword here, just because I already read this again last night, and it's like every year that goes on, it's just amazing how much this really starts to make more sense. So I really have to scratch my head and say, well, I guess what I was going back to earlier, saying just keep in mind this was written in 2000, in 1999, and 2000, 2001, roughly. The answers he gives, and then he'll answer the question and then throw in a little additional piece that actually had nothing to really do with the question, but it was helpful, and added something else to it that you say, oh my God, if someone was making this up...
Tell him where to go, Shelley.
That piece
early morning, my dad.
That wasn't even necessary.
This is the Golden Debate Show.
Who could do that?
Also
who could make this up in that
show,
fashion?
The greatest show.
You'll see that
every other show, that we're gonna do.
So let me. But I feel like I just want to give you the round.
Science. Okay. Shut up already. This is science.
What are your memories of 2036? In 2036, I live in Central Florida with my family, and I'm currently stationed at an Army base in Tampa. I can tell you that must be MacDill Air Force Base because I live here in Tampa. A world war in 2015 killed nearly 3 billion people. The people that survived grew closer together. Life is centered on the family and then the community. I cannot imagine living even a few hundred miles away from my parents. There is no large industrial complex creating masses of useless food and recreational items. Food and livestock is grown and sold locally. People spend much more time reading and talking face to face. Religion is taken seriously, and everyone can multiply and divide in their heads. How is our world line different from this one? Someone asked him. I would guess the temporal divergence between this world line and my original world line is about 1 or 2%. Of course, the longer I am here, the larger that divergence becomes from my point of view. Next question. Are you drawn back to your world line of origin for any reason? Is instability a problem for you? He says, I'm not sure what you mean by stable. If you mean mentally, there are many things that bother me here, but being with my parents right now, on this world line, his parents, is important to me. Physically, the only thing really wrong is the number of colds I get. He happens to get more colds on this world line back in the past, because again, if he's from 2036 and he's here in 1990, I think it started in 1998, and then 99, 2000, 2001 came, where he goes on to explain that this machine takes a snapshot of the gravity, and the sun, the moon, things have to align a certain way to affect that, which will affect that gravity, and it's getting the next best opportunity to leave. And the only way that can happen, he can't just leave when he wants. This particular gravity field has to be back the way it was or close to it, to where the machine will take him back. And he says the funny thing is, even though he's going back to his world line, he's not actually going back to the world line he left from. Just another world line that was almost identical, again, because that divergence is there. So it's fascinating, yet you got to remain a little skeptical. But again, when you hear everything I have to say, that I'm going to read word for word, you're just going to be like, oh my God, like how is this possible? From 2000, So he says, are you drawn? No, Cole's like, okay. Are you able to return to your home?
God!
Yes.
Down there in one of those catacombs.
Where you are.
There's other guys that they looks like, I don't know.
No, they do not know where I am, and I cannot communicate with them. Interesting idea, though. From their point of view, I will return almost exactly at the same moment I left. From their viewpoint, I will have only aged more than expected. Now, I want to stop for a second, because I think about some of these people that you hear about. I've been abducted by aliens, and they did things to me and probed me and whatever, okay? But I'm talking about the best of the best cases. There's only a few. Where the person left and then came back with a full 4 or 5 week beard. That kind of stuff. Facial hair is bad. They just shaved today, got abducted, seemed like they're only gone minutes, and the next thing they know, they're back at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they got a full facial hair, on their face. That's interesting because the technology to really go from here to another star system has to be by manipulating gravity waves, and he gets into a little bit of detail of that. So if you're manipulating the gravity waves and you're messing with time, what he is just describing sounds like a UFO experience. So that kind of is interesting to me because of the technology they use, I guess I should say. So he says, do people know where we are? Can you communicate? No, they can't communicate. Interesting idea. From their point of view, I will return almost exactly at the same moment I left. From their viewpoint, I will have only aged more than expected. You do not rewrite history. I can only affect what happens here on this world line, the one he's visiting, ours, just as easily as you can. Why do people in this time period worry so much about time travelers destroying their world line when they have no problem doing it themselves every day? My goal is not to be believed. Most people do not take news of the war very well, but I find that everyone believes it's inevitable. Even in your own history, are not great inventions and discoveries made during a war or during a time of war in your effort to kill and maim in new and more efficient ways? No, I do not work for GE or any other company. And by the way, when I'm reading this, it sounds like he's answering other questions all into one, and he did do that on the forums. So I know it may seem confusing, but just bear with me. It's the way it came out, so that's how I'm going to read it. No, I do not work for GE or any other company. Are stock tips really the first thing you want to know about in the future? As a representative of your time period, do you realize what that says about you? You should probably know that this time period is not remembered for its selflessness, charity, or ability to work together. In the future, they look back upon us and say, what a bunch of schmucks, is what he's saying. Why would I want to talk with you? Why don't you believe you have something interesting or worthwhile to say to someone in the future? Again, he answers a bunch of questions. No, the ice caps are not melting any faster than they are now. There is also far less smog and industrial waste in 2036. You asked about the North Polar ice pack. I never said the environment wasn't a problem.
Already. This is
Doesn't
science.
water expand when it freezes? If the polar ice cap melted, wouldn't sea level go down? I don't know if there's enough ice for this to make a difference, and I'm not an expert on global warming. Yes, I realize people become hostile. It's another paragraph. Yes, I realize people become hostile. I don't expect anyone to believe me, and I have nothing to sell. I take no offense by it. Just out of curiosity, if you were a time traveler, what do you think it would take to get people to believe you? Next paragraph. I suppose we could agree that no particular era in history is famous for its development of humanity. But just once, I would like to hear questions like, what is family life like in the future? How does society deal with poverty? Is AIDS, abortion, and drug use still a problem? That was him replying. Next paragraph. Why don't I give you a stock tip? The money you make would dilute the intelligence and forethought that a smart person had in picking the stock all by themselves. If I told you how to get rich, I would be taking money from them and giving it to you. Next paragraph or sentence. I am not aware of any physical change to my DNA or aura. I do, however, seem to be more susceptible to colds. Next one. Yes, you will remember me if you want to. World lines do not change that way, and I will only become an innocent
This is science.
Next one. Yes, I believe in Jesus Christ, and we pray to God in churches. There are some differences you may be interested in. Religion is a major part of people's life in 2036. Pain and change tend to bring people together and closer to God. However, religion is more personal than it is now. There are no huge centralized religions, and people talk openly about their beliefs. It might also interest you to know that the day of worship is Saturday. The day God meant to be the Sabbath.
There's other guys that they look like, I don't know.
Tell these fine people peace, and we'll see them in the future.
Golden Debate.
Like, comment, share, and download. See you in the future. Yeah, if you're going to time travel, stay golden.
Yes, compared to now, long hours. West coast of Florida. My closest friend raises horses, and another works for a company